Hey, Tim.
Hey, Rachel.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Politico. I'm Rachel Parker.
And I'm Tim Fullerton.
Hey, Tim, I had an idea. I don't know how you're going to feel about it because you're kind of law-abiding and you're a humble, honest, good person.
Oh, God.
I'm thinking about maybe I should do a coup.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I was thinking about it. And I have it on good authority that we might be living through one in the United States right now. I don't know if you heard about it or not. Did you hear about it?
Well, I've heard that laws, especially federal laws, don't seem to matter anymore, at least according to this new administration.
Right. Not if you're the president. Nixon said that, right? He said if you're the president, laws don't apply to you. And that didn't at all end his administration in a terrible way.
Whoops.
Oopsie-doopsie. So it's a joke. We don't do coups here at Politico because we are not billionaires. And we generally speaking have respect for the rule of law. It's weird how we do that here.
We're very anti-coup.
It's
one of our mission statement. We're anti-coup.
We don't talk about it a lot because we're not those kinds of people, but we're super anti-coup.
Very much
but
so.
Elon Musk not as much apparently. So we are very. I want to say first of all that we were very humbled when an old contact. I reached out to Tim and I was like, I really want to talk to Josh Marshall from Talking Points Memo. And you were like, oh, let me call him. And I was like, oh, right, because you're Tim Fullerton. So, of course, that's what you said. But you've known Josh for a while professionally, and he was doing some really awesome work on Blue Sky when all of this stuff about Elon and so-called Doge, which we should say basically Doge is not a department, it's a task force, essentially, in form. But that they have forced themselves with Trump's approval and support into various systems of government. And those stories were breaking over the weekend. And there were so many stories breaking at such a rapid fire way that it was really hard to keep track of it. And Josh was one of those accounts that I was kind of like, I don't want to say that I was doom scrolling. I was actually just looking at breaking news on the internet, which used to be a healthy thing to do. And it felt like the right thing for me personally last week. So we sat down and we talked to Josh about Elon and company, and I think it was a helpful conversation, and I think it at least put some of it into context, I'll say, like that.
Yeah, I think, and Josh has a unique perspective. One, he's run, and he was the founder, and he's run Talking Points Memo for, 20 years or more than that now, I think. But he's also sort of a historian as well, so he has a different perspective. And, I think everybody knows that what Doge is doing is terrible, but they don't really know why. And that's by design. As you mentioned, this is the Steve Bannon flood the zone mentality so that things fly by before anybody has a chance to see it. So I think, Josh did a really good job in this. I mean, he's the pro at breaking down just how bad this is, not only just from a governmental perspective, but how this is going to affect you, the listener. And one of the things at the very end, so please watch and listen all the way through, is a discussion about how quickly this is going to impact your daily life if all of this stuff goes through that they are trying to do. And that is not a positive, unfortunately.
No, it's not. But the good news is that folks like Josh are making it transparent. They're bringing it into the daylight. That's all we can really hope for at this point, is that we drag these stories into the light of day. And so without any further ado, here is our interview with Josh. So here we are with Josh Marshall of Talking Points Memo, as we said we would be. Josh, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's just a crazy time, to say the least, and thank you for peeling off some time for our little corner of the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. So first, I wanted to say that it feels like a year every day right now, but it was 25 years ago, and by 25 years ago, I mean a week ago tomorrow, that you started posting on Blue Sky, perhaps on your other platforms as well, I don't know, about some activity that you were hearing about that now has been brokered by Wired and The Atlantic and some other publications, including yours, about some of the activities that Elon Musk and his Doge team were taking in very, very, very secure parts of the federal Treasury system and other really sensitive IT systems. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you, because it seemed too preposterous to be real, and if I was seeing it in a movie, I'd be like, you guys, that's a little on the nose, don't you think? That's a little too Bond villainy for real life. But apparently, since we are living in a real life James Bond movie now, I'm just going to throw it to you and let you talk broadly about kind of this incursion, I'll call it, a so-called incursion, what you can say about it, and just basically giving people the broad strokes if they haven't been able to follow along, because it is a very dynamic and very fast-paced story, and it is by design hard to follow, right?
Yeah, no, it is. There's a strong kind of Bond villain character to the whole thing, and I mean, talk about 25 years. I'm even kind of wondering if this was yesterday. I think it was yesterday when they had this press conference, or maybe it was 2 days ago. God, I'm losing track. When they had this press conference in the Oval Office with Trump and Musk standing there.
Yeah, yesterday.
Yesterday, okay. And then they signed this. He signed this executive order, which they didn't release the details of that until later in the evening. But basically, what that executive order did was create a group of Doge minders that will kind of sit with the head of every executive agency, which in this case is a term of art, which includes departments and those people. So like, the secretary of this and the secretary of that and the director of this agency and director of that agency will have to go to the Doge person and say, does this sound good? Okay to you? And Doge obviously reports up to Elon Musk. So we're looking at a situation where somehow Elon Musk is now running the government, kind of, and not just in some like hyperbolic sense. And as much as I expected terrible things from a second Trump presidency, like I'm not sure it's worse than I anticipated, but it's quite a bit different than I anticipated, right? And so to get to your to go to your question, yes, that kind of out of the blue, Musk got this crew of intentional college dropout fanboys. Right, people who didn't drop out of college in what we used to mean by that thing, more in the new Peter Thiel sense of I was so damn awesome I left college because I needed to hit my destiny now kind of people, and they got sent out to departments across the government with basically kind of like a piece of paper from Donald Trump. This guy speaks for me. Do whatever he tells you to do. And yes, they started going into, depending on the department, they started going into the computer systems. Often they went into the contracts. In many cases, went into the personnel files and started just ripping things up and canceling contracts. And in some cases, you're not able to fire people, but you can just say, okay, go home. We'll see you in 5 years, right? These kind of things that are de facto firings and everything. And it was so weird and outside everybody's experience that it took a little while for anybody to figure out what was going on. But this crew has basically allowed the president, Donald Trump, to be governing outside the Constitution for the last couple weeks. And, it's not only is that not good, but this is a pretty weird way for it to have come about.
Yeah, and I'll just say, Josh, and for those of you who don't know, I spent 5 years in the federal government. I was a political appointee in the Obama administration at the Interior Department, which has 75,000 employees. So just to give people a sense of how crazy this is, definitely illegal. So what you're saying is essentially, let's take Interior, for example, there's one person that will be designated as the Doge, I don't know what we call them, the head of the fiefdom or whatever.
They used to in the Soviet Union, there was a state structure, and whoever was the head of the state structure, where in the hierarchy, had a political officer from the Communist Party there to make sure that everything stayed in line.
Right.
And I know that's kind of a pretty hyperbolic analogy, but that's kind of what we're talking about here.
I mean, it certainly is. I mean, because what you're saying, and if I'm reading you correctly, is that for all of those agencies, there will be one person in charge of all yay and naying of hirings and firings, which, if anybody knows, HR at all, knows that like one person for 70,000 people it's not feasible. Like, this is just, and I think, you tell me, but is obviously designed to hire nobody.
Yeah, I mean,
essentially.
Yes, the overriding thing is we are going to, through attrition and whatever we can sort of jam through the notional interpretation of the law, we're just going to get rid of people. Yes. So yes, this is all kind of, I think we remember when this happened at Twitter, and at least there, I mean, look, Elon Musk bought the company. He took it private. It was his. So obviously you have to operate within the employment law in the state you operate in. But basically he just said, okay, bye, I'm firing everybody. And that sucked. But broadly speaking, he can do that. And he's doing something similar, some wires got crossed in the matrix over the last few months where somehow he's doing that in the federal government. And it's really happening.
And do you think that they will be successful with this? Do you think that the courts will be able to stop it? I'm curious, because right now I think everybody on the center and the left is sort of feeling powerless, and that there is really obviously no respect for federal law at this point. But is the judiciary strong enough to push back on this, or is this our new reality?
I think that is very much to be determined. One thing that is floating in the background through all of this is that these people make the legal argument that these laws are not constitutional in themselves because the president is the president, and any law, their basic argument is that any law that tries to shape or limit the authority of the president is itself unconstitutional. Now, that is absurd, but that is the argument that they are trying to make. I would say that what we've seen so far in the courts is that pretty quickly in each one of these cases, a court steps in and basically says, hold on, stop. And as far as it goes, they have not ignored any of those orders. But the reality I think we're seeing is by the time they tell them to stop at USAID, they're already on to the education department, or they're already on to another department. And just in the structure of how federal and administrative law works, that's a new case. You can't say, not only do you have to stop at Interior, I mean stop everywhere. It doesn't work that way. Each one is a new thing. So he's sort of running ahead of the courts. Having said that, the courts are stopping certain things. I think since it was the first thing and the ones that they seem to have the greatest ambitions for, it's been stopped at USAID, but USAID doesn't exist anymore. Everybody has been sent home. People have, USAID, it's just in the nature of the work it does, has thousands of people who are abroad and their families. They're all being and mostly have been brought back now. The money spigots have been shut off for the countless programs that it runs abroad. So that's already kind of done, right? That has happened. And as often is the case in like employment law, you can have a judge a year later say, oh, you shouldn't have been fired, but you're already working a new job. So like you might get like a cash settlement, but certain things cannot be turned back. It has other in other departments, they have sort of gotten to it more quickly and things have been arrested more quickly. I mean, one of the things that I have been focused on the most in my own reporting is the situation at NIH. There you have the sort of the constant lesson of history, which is it's a lot easier to break things than it is to create things or reconstruct them after the fact. And at NIH, a lot of the stuff that they have done has been held up by the courts, but these are very complex systems. And once you introduce a certain level of chaos, things just start breaking down. And one of the things at NIH is, I mean, think of NIH, broadly speaking, they do some internal science. They're largely in the grant writing business to fund science at academic medical centers, at universities, and so forth. And one of the ways that is done is you have meetings to go over what you're working on and, kind of a government version of peer review and stuff like this. So in addition to, at first, freezing all the grant-making authority, they also did this thing. We're not talking to people anymore. You can't talk to people. And so that you can't talk to people shuts down the ability to do the grant making or the ability to know that the grant making is being done right. And even in addition to this, I think so basically they're coming at it from a lot of different angles. And in addition to that, I think what I have seen, and it's always a question in these cases, is some of this stuff by design or just that a lot of stuff got broken and now kind of people don't know how to reassemble it. I think that in a number of cases, things are not happening, maybe not because of a specific action, but because people don't know what the current line is. Like, are we allowed to do this? Which judge's ruling covered this thing? And I think that broadly speaking, it's probably the best way to look at it, that it is part of the strategy to break a ton of stuff at once, that it's going to introduce a lot of chaos and confusion, and that will have its own effects. But the takeaway to this, I think, is that the federal funding of science is in a state of paralysis right now. That continues to be the case, even though a lot of the high-profile things have been, put under restraining orders by judges and stuff like that. So that's kind of where that is.
Right. And I mean, one thing I'd like to dig in a little bit further on this.
Tim, can I make one more point?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm realizing at the end, like, you didn't answer his question. I think that on the will it work? We're going to find out. I think it is very much up in the air, and I think that the way to see this for people who care about this country, who care about, maybe that they grew up in a country where kind of like, we do the top science in this country. People come from other parts of the world to do science here, and if that means something to you, I think that the way we need to see this is not one act or one court order, that we have a out-of-control executive branch, which I think for this issue, this train is being driven by Elon Musk. Trump's saying awesome. When I heard about it, I said high five. But this train is being driven by Elon Musk, and he is coming at it with all the power that he has with his money, his communications platform, and so forth. You have the courts, which at least will be able to slow things down. And slowing things down is critical because a lot of what we're dealing with here is, the move fast and break things mentality. And you want to slow that down to give other forces a chance to get on the field, right? And by slowing it down, courts bring information out, right? And at the end of the day, this is going to come out, this is going to be a battle about public opinion, right? Do the American people want this to happen? And there, you're going to have Musk, you're going to have the courts, you're going to have the opposition party, Democrats, having access, despite being out of power, to some levers of authority. And how are they going to use those? And how will all those things play out going towards the next election, the 2026 election, 2028 election? So this is a big battle with a lot of different factors in place, and we don't know if it's going to work.
So you make a good point about public opinion, and I think we have seen some early polls, which it's really hard to tell if they are legit or not, but show at least not cratering support for first few weeks. And I think there was an NBC poll that sort of showed it was something like 51% approval, which feels high to me, but it was there and they are legit. So talk a little bit about why should the public care about this, right? Because the public generally thinks the government's wasteful, spends too much money. Oh, you're going to cut USAID? Great. Oh, you're going to cut NIH? So what? What is the real world, like the practical implications to the public for cutting this funding and basically breaking this to the point where it may not be fixable down the road?
Right. I think one thing for starters is that you can believe, as I do, that what happened to USAID last week is a national shame that the country will not live down for decades into the future. You can believe that while also understand that foreign aid has never been popular. It is never popular. You could never go into an electoral context on foreign aid and you would lose every single time. People don't know what it does. They think it is, they think it's 25% of the federal budget. So that is one thing. So to a great extent, if you are, it would be crazy to kind of go to the public on USAID. That's just the reality. On NIH, I think in a political there's two levers there, three levers. One is, do you like cancer? Because
right.
most of what we are talking about here is research for new cancer cures, and I have a lot of confidence that cancer's brand in the United States is very damaged. No one likes cancer, so. And that's really what this is about, right? So, in terms of that is what I think the opposition needs to focus a lot on. Their big priority seems to be shutting down all the research into new cures for cancer, and maybe if your great uncle is in a trial now because he's run out of conventional solutions, that trial's being cut off. Yeah, I mean, it depends where you are on the age scale, right? Whether we're talking about ourselves or
lots of children are actually in more trial programs because juvenile cancer is so much harder to treat. Yeah.
Well, harder to treat, and also both harder to treat, but there's also been more success in some ways because you've had certain juvenile cancers where you say, wow, 20 years ago it was a death sentence and now you're good to go, right? You have these leaps forward, blah, blah, blah. In any case, the point is people care about cancer. That is people say politicizing something is bad, but people care about that. They care about it a lot. It also matters for this is how academic medical centers function. They function to a great degree on grants. So do you want there to be a kick-ass hospital somewhere close to where you live, where you can go if you get into trouble? So that, again, is a big thing. And another part, just to come back to here, in a lot of parts of the country, these grants sustain whole economies. Just one example, University of Alabama, Birmingham, I believe, and again, I don't have the exact stuff in front of me. I believe it is the largest employer in the state. And over the last few years, they have gotten $1 billion in research money from NIH. And I think, as probably your listeners know, Katie Britt, who's the one who kind of inherited, his name escapes me, the former, the retired Alabama senator who just retired. In any case, she's all in for Trump, but she came out like the day after, like, whoa, we totally wanted to break the deep state, but this particular money.
I didn't mean my state.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
right.
But I'm interested in this.
It matters a lot to ordinary things that people will
Sure.
hear.
So I want to actually drill it because, Josh, that was actually the example I was going to ask you about, because I was actually a bit surprised to see her come out so forcefully, because she has been one of the president's fiercest supporters and was a strong campaign.
And she framed it as support. Like, I love Donald Trump. No one loves Donald Trump as much as I do, but. Right.
And I think something like the $1 billion, and it's like something like 4,500, 5,000 high-paying jobs in Alabama, which we all know. Let's be honest, they do not have those in abundance.
It's a poor state. Yeah.
So do you as this becomes real, because it's one thing, Republicans are great at opposition, right? And they're great about being opposed to things. But generally speaking, when they come in, they don't run things particularly well. And then also, like, they don't want anything to happen to them. So the NIH thing and then the Department of Education thing, which would be even bigger, and by the way, means a whole host of things, including the elimination of all funding for special education across the country. It comes from the Department of Education. Are these Republican senators, like, I mean, if a Katie Britt, who's pretty conservative, I mean, and, you know, we can all say what we want about Susan Collins, but like if there's a Katie Britt in there and there's a Lankford in there and a Cassidy and then a Murkowski and a Collins, they have a problem. Like, do you see this becoming a major issue for them to be able to pass their agenda? Because to me, like, is she really going to vote to or support the cutting of $1 billion to NIH in Alabama? Like, it just seems a bit crazy to me.
I think it is. That is one case that I am very confident there are comparable cases around the country, very red states, very red districts, where you're having a replay of that. I think, as we all know, Republicans have kids with special education needs too, right? I mean, this affects a lot of people. So I think that, some of this is a matter of what we've always known with the Republican Party for decades, which is there's a lot of rhetorical attacking spending and blah, 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 blah. But when you get down to when you get down to specifics, it's a bit of a different story, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that what Musk is trying to do fundamentally here is, and to the extent that the Republican Party is supporting them, there are things they've wanted to do forever, but they cannot get it through Congress. And I don't mean just like because there's a filibuster. You just when it is a public thing, and you're saying, do you really want to cut all the special education money in the entire country? People start saying, well, then maybe not. But Musk is able to go in there and just out of a political context, literally get over the shoulder on the computer, cancel the contract. And they want to create fait accompli that it just happens. And as we saw, that happened with the USAID. I think, again, this is what we were talking about before. You've got Musk, you've got the courts, you've got the limited things the opposition can do. I think this is going to slow down a lot. And what the opposition needs to do is say, hey, if you want to cut this stuff, you're in charge. You can do it, but you've got to do it in the real way. And that is where everything starts getting a lot more complicated. So I think a lot of this is, comes down to you need to slow things down. You need to get people thinking like, okay, do you want to take, $300 million a year out of the economy of the greater Birmingham area? You don't have to be like a hardcore resistance person to say like, oh, maybe not. Maybe can we slow down that a lot? Education, blah, blah. One of the big things they did a couple days ago was they canceled out most of the grants that create the data that, when someone wants to advocate for charter schools or privatization of schools, they bring out this data. Your school is failing. It's terrible. It's not educating the kids in math. Well, where's that data come from? They just canceled a lot of the work that produces that data. So there's a lot of this stuff that I think, it gets a little more complicated than just the money being spent by the deep state bureaucrats. Once you can slow things down, that's really kind of, in some ways, that's the name of the game right now.
Can I quote you back to you? Is that okay?
I'd love, my ego will love it.
Oh my gosh, I love nothing more.
Yes.
So, I don't know. Again, it was like 50 years ago last week when you wrote a piece about something to do with like the Democrats' only leverage is the debt ceiling, and there's been all sorts of other
the
pieces.
Continuing resolution.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are very important. But what really stuck with me that I think is the right talking point right now, and this is something that most Americans who don't really follow politics quite like the three people on this particular podcast panel do, especially you two, is that they think everybody's just equally corrupt, right? Everybody's just corrupt. Joe Biden was corrupt. He pardoned his son, whatever, all this stuff, right? But there's something really clarifying that you said about like this, tell them that the illegality has to stop. if you, and what you just said reminded me of it. You have control. Let's be clear that RFK Jr. was confirmed this morning, had Senator Casey's Montana tester, and let's just say for fun, Manchin. Let's say all those three were still in the Senate. RFK Jr. is still confirmed, right? So they have a solid control of Congress and the presidency, and they're still using end runs around the power of the purse. So what do you think? And we could have a whole other podcast about the potential security breaches and all these other like dangerous things that could be introducing to these IT systems that we don't know about yet, that we're probably only going to find out about when something horrible happens, and that's terrible. But what I want to maybe, and I guess we can end here, what I really want to hear you say is, how do you think, as people who are believers in the rule of law, who believe that, like it or not, they're in control and they can do what they want within the law, how do you think that we can tell the American people who may not necessarily support democratic regimes, how can we frame this as, this is just straight up law breaking? This is just absolute, most of this appears to be in full force against the law. Like, how can we do a better job of that, do you think?
A lot of this comes down to, we all watched Schoolhouse Rock. The Congress makes the laws and it makes the budget, and then the president enforces the laws and spends the money. What's happening here is the president is saying, it doesn't matter what it A, doesn't matter what laws you passed, and it B, doesn't matter what money you said needs to be spent. I'm in charge. I will do what I want. That is as flagrantly opposed to the Constitution as you can get. It is illegal. By everything we know, there is widespread criminal conduct across the board here. It is against the law. It is against the Constitution. It is also doing things that you will feel really soon. Parts of the government that you rely on will not work. Parts of the hospital that you go to when you get sick will have to be shut down. Cures that you are hoping will exist in 10 years will not be there. So, look, the Democrats lost the election. They are in charge. And under the system of legitimacy that we operate in, that gives them a lot of power. And if they want to make all these changes, they can. I think the Democrats need to make the argument that we have a way you can make changes. You have the votes. You need to do it that way. And for us to be involved in any way helping you, even in the sort of the edge case ways, the crime has to stop. The criminal conduct has to stop. If it stops, then we can see what we can negotiate on. But the criminal conduct has to stop, just full stop. And not just because of some, airy-fairy concept about democracy and this and that and the other, but real stuff that will affect you, except in the rare cases where you are also a billionaire and no one in your family is sick or has developmental learning problems or anything else. If you were a Superman, then you're good to go. But for everyone else, you're going to feel it. And we've got a system and a constitution, and we need to follow that. And that's kind of the end of the story.
Yeah, I agree. And I am a big fan of Democrats basically doing exactly that, saying you get nothing until this stops. And I, as someone who lived through a shutdown as a federal employee, I am 100%, well, I should say now 99% against shutdowns in all cases. But Senator Kim's from New Jersey coming out in support of shutting the government down over something like this, I actually think is a good idea, because the way the government is operating right now is illegal and it is not helping anybody. So shutting it down is actually probably a good idea. So
and one thing, just for the kind of rhetorically and politically how people talk about this, they're in charge. The Democrats can't shut the government down. They cannot figure things out amongst themselves, and they're saying, "Hey, we're gonna shut the government down. Can you help us not shut the government down?"
Right.
In this case, we're like, dude, if you want our help, this is our our baseline demand. So yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, I know you're a busy man, so we are going to let you go. But before we do, we just wanted to thank you and everybody listening. If you are not subscribed to Talking Points Memo, please go do that. There are I'm just going to editorialize a little bit here, but there are not that many national publications out there that I think we can trust to hold these guys accountable and actually tell us what's going on. And Josh and the folks at Talking Points Memo have been doing it for years, and they continue to do so. So please join me as a subscriber. And thank you again, Josh, for joining us. And hopefully we'll have you back soon, and maybe we'll have some better news to report. I don't know. We'll see. But
yes. Get some better news, and I'll be right back.
Thanks, Josh. We'll do our best.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Take care,
guys.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Today's episode was produced by Rachel Parker and Tim Fullerton. Audio, music, and engineering by Chris Lombardo. Our assistant producer is Lizette Nolasco. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts and watch entire episodes on our YouTube channel. Sign up for premium content and more at politigoodpod.com or email us at hello@politigoodpod.com.